Look at this. Right there, head down. Is this your big plan? Is this what you want? Are you sure you want to do this, Monken? Blink twice if you want to start Deshaun Watson.
It's training camp season, and Deshaun Watson just had himself a day. Multiple interceptions, some of them dropped, so the real number is worse than the box score. 11 for 16, 1 touchdown, 2 picks on paper. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders went 17 for 25, and the season numbers are starting to tell a real story. Watson just became the first quarterback on this roster to hit double-digit interceptions in camp. Sanders is sitting at 4. Today, we're breaking down every rep, every pick, and why Todd Monken might be running out of excuses. Let's start with the numbers, because the numbers don't lie. Watson with 11 for 16 today with a touchdown and 2 picks. But that stat line is generous. There were more than 2 interceptions if you count the drops. Sanders, on the other side, went 17 for 25. Now, stack that against the whole camp. Watson has 11 interceptions through this training camp. That makes him the first quarterback on this roster to hit double digits. Sanders has thrown 4 all camp. Less completions for Watson too, and way fewer attempts, which tells you Monken hasn't even been letting him air it out as much, and he's still finding ways to give the ball away. Here's the stat that should actually worry the coaching staff more than any of that, though. Watson has completed maybe 1 or 2 passes out of his last 10 attempts that traveled 10-plus yards in the air over the last 2 practices. That's not a small sample thing anymore. That's a pattern. The arm strength complaints, the deep ball disappearing, it's not just Twitter noise. It's showing up in back-to-back practices now, and it's the kind of stat that should be on every tracker in that building. More important, honestly, than touchdowns or picks on their own.
Some of them were dropped, so there's more than just 2 technically. And 11 for 16, a touchdown, 2 picks. Sanders 17 for 25. Then you look at what they've done during the training camp season, 11 interceptions. First quarterback on this roster to hit double digits. Sanders just 4 picks. Also, less completions. We had that rumor that he needed rest, and Mary Kay walked it back. And then she walked it back twice on 92.3 The Fan. She walked it back. And now we're starting to see it in a preseason game, and everybody's calling out for the short A-dot. We're seeing this in back-to-back practices now, where it's not being pushed downfield. He's completed in the last 2 practices about 1 or 2 passes.
Everybody wants to talk about the box score. The real story is in the tape, and the tape says Watson can't push the ball downfield right now. Now let's talk about what's happening off the stat sheet, because this part matters just as much. Watson was asked about the Browns fans and how they feel about him, and his answer basically boiled down to he doesn't care. Doesn't care that they booed him coming off the field with the Achilles injury. Doesn't care what the fan base thinks about the $230 million investment that hasn't paid off yet. There's no remorse in how he's talking about any of it. And look, maybe that's a mindset thing you want from a competitor, but when you pair that attitude with the quarterback play actually leaving a lot to be desired, and even the Browns media themselves saying Shedeur looked like the better quarterback during the public portion of camp, that's a rough combination. You've got a guy who isn't performing and isn't showing any urgency about the fans turning on him. That's not a great look heading into preseason games that actually count for something.
Watson, and then look at what he said about the Browns fans and what they think about him. He just doesn't care. He just doesn't care. He doesn't care about the Browns fans. They were booing him when he came off the field with the Achilles. He did what he did. Still doesn't care. No remorse at all. Also, the quarterback play leaves a lot to be desired. That's on all the ends. All maybe 4. Taylor Green ain't getting no reps. But again, that's what they're saying. But this has been a constant theme of camps where the Browns media, I personally thought Shedeur was the better QB during the public portion of training camp. Seems both Shedeur and Deshaun aren't doing as good today.
If the guy making $230 million doesn't care what the building thinks of him, why should the building keep giving him the reps? Let's actually walk through some of these interceptions, because context matters here. Early in the session, you see the play-action rollouts. Watson stepping up in the pocket, stepping up again, and then the ball just doesn't come out clean. Dead plays, balls sailing on receivers. One of the picks was a real head-scratcher, a slow roller back that gets read and jumped before the receiver even has a shot at it. Then there's the one everybody's going to be talking about. Watson stares down his receiver the entire route, no disguise at all, then tries some kind of no-look move at the last second and just throws it right into the defender's hands. That's not bad luck. That's a football decision that a starting quarterback with his kind of money and his kind of experience should not be making in year 8. To be fair, not every pick was egregious. A couple of them were one-on-one battles downfield where the throw was defensible, even if the result wasn't. But when you stack 6, 7, 8 of these reps together across one practice, you stop seeing bad luck and you start seeing a trend.
We got about 3 minutes. It's the camera and justice footage. So we're going to see the lowlights. We're going to see some, if there is, the highlights. But here we go. Play action, stepping up. We get it. Malachi Corley. Play action again. Stepping up in the pocket. Stepping up, stepping up, stepping up. Dead play. Dead play. More play action, if you note that. Ball in the air. Picked. Picked. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to all the picks. Stepping back. Rifles it out. Nice grab. Rolling out. Flips it. Picked. Picked. INT 2.5 because the third one should have been caught. Downfield. Where's that one going? Play action. Step in. There's the pick. There's the pick. Let's go back to this. That's more important than touchdowns, intercept. That is very important. Right here. Here's the pick. Look. Jumps the route. Jumps it. We're moving too slow. But here. You can't see what he's seeing. But watch his eyes. Straight looking at it. Rolling, looking at it with fire. Comes out, jumps it. You see it right there. You're just staring him down. It was like that no-look interception he threw. He stared down the wide receiver and then looked away to try and do some fancy no-look and then just threw a pick. That was like a week and a half or so ago.
That no-look interception right there might be the single worst rep of Watson's entire training camp, and that's saying something with 11 picks already on the board. So here's the question that actually matters for Todd Monken. Is this really what you're sending out there? Is this the plan you're comfortable with heading to Florida, heading on the road against Jacksonville, and eventually against Baker Mayfield? Because right now, the tape says otherwise. You've got a young quarterback in Shedeur who's turning the ball over 4 times all camp, and a veteran in Watson who's already hit 11, with a deep ball that's basically disappeared over the last 2 weeks of practice. And there's a version of this where Monken already knows the writing on the wall. There's chatter connecting Watson to a future landing spot with his old coordinator Kevin Stefanski, who's now running things in Atlanta. If that ends up being the actual outcome down the line, then what exactly is happening right now in Cleveland starts to look less like a real quarterback competition and more like Watson getting run out there just enough to stay in game shape for wherever he ends up next.
Right over top, we're sailing balls. We're back to it. So this is what you're going to send to Florida? Is this what you're going to send against Jacksonville and then against Baker Mayfield on the road? You're going to send this, Monken? This is what you're thinking about doing? Is this your big plan? Is this what you want? Are you sure you want to do this, Monken? Blink twice if you want to start Deshaun Watson. He's going to Stefanski next year probably. Like, you're just getting him ready for Stefanski. You're getting him lubed up. I'm just using Watson's wordage, okay, guys?
You know it, I know it, and at this point, even the fans booing him at practice know it. Something has to give with this quarterback room. And here's where it gets even more interesting. If Cleveland does end up on the road against Tampa Bay with Watson still under center, that's a Baker Mayfield revenge game waiting to happen. Baker hasn't forgotten how his time in Cleveland ended, and he is not the type to let a moment like that pass quietly. The two of them haven't lined up against each other since Watson's Texans days years ago, and Baker at home with a real shot to get one over on the guy who effectively replaced him, that's the kind of storyline that writes itself. Think about the layers here for a second. Baker gets traded out of Cleveland, bounces around the league, gets written off more than once, and ends up rebuilding his career in Tampa. Watson comes in with the $230 million fully guaranteed deal, the kind of number that was supposed to end any quarterback debate in that building for a decade. Instead, Watson tears his Achilles, sits out the entire year, and now he's back on the field turning the ball over more than any quarterback on the roster. Baker Mayfield does not need extra motivation for this one, but if he gets it, he is going to make sure everybody remembers exactly what happened. Now flip that. If it's Shedeur under center by that point instead, the whole tone of that road trip changes completely. Instead of a revenge story working against Cleveland, you get the feel-good young quarterback storyline, the kid learning on the job, and a loss on the road doesn't sting nearly as bad. Nobody's writing hot takes about a rookie losing to Baker Mayfield on the road. That's expected. That's development. But if it's Watson out there struggling the way he has been in camp, and Baker Mayfield gets to be the one who makes that $230 million investment look even worse on national television, that's a storyline the front office should be dreading right now. And it's not just Tampa on the schedule that should worry Monken. Jacksonville is up first on that same road trip, and that defense has been building something real up front. You add a pass rusher who's been looking like a problem in camp, and you're sending a quarterback who can't push the ball more than a couple yards downfield into a matchup where he's going to need to move people with his legs and his arm just to survive. That's not a great recipe when the deep ball has basically disappeared over the last 2 weeks. Then there's the bigger picture nobody wants to say out loud yet. If Watson really is auditioning for a future landing spot with his old coordinator, teams like the Cardinals, the Jets, or even Tampa Bay itself become storylines worth watching. Not because any of that is confirmed, but because it would explain a whole lot about how conservative Cleveland has been with his workload this camp. Fewer attempts, fewer deep shots, a shorter leash on the offense as a whole. That's not the profile of a team building around a quarterback for the long haul. That's the profile of a team managing a situation until it resolves itself one way or another. There's a history lesson buried in here too, if you want to look for it. Baker Mayfield has done this before. Back at Oklahoma, he planted the flag on the logo at Ohio State after a win there, and he became one of those moments that follows a guy around for the rest of his career. That's not a random detail. That's a preview of exactly the kind of energy Baker brings when he gets a chance to make a statement in front of a crowd that used to be his own. Cleveland fans lived through that Baker Mayfield fearlessness for years before it went sideways with the front office. Now, imagine that same energy, except this time it's aimed directly back at the building that moved on from him to make room for Watson in the first place. And let's not pretend the offensive line situation makes any of this easier. Cleveland is already talking about not putting the starters out there for the third preseason game, which is normal roster management, but it also means whatever quarterback is out there in these earlier weeks is working behind a group that isn't fully formed yet. If that's Watson, a guy who's already struggling to move the ball efficiently and already hesitant to push it downfield, an inconsistent offensive line just compounds every single problem we've already talked about. Pressure up front turns hesitation into panic, and panic turns into exactly the kind of picks we've been breaking down this entire video.
It would be quite apropos to have him versus Baker Mayfield, the one that got away here, and then your investment afterwards, and Baker Mayfield crushes him. Last time they faced each other was like,
Baker Mayfield already dropped the flag on his old program once before when he had the chance. Don't think for a second he wouldn't do it again given the opportunity. And this time, the stakes are even bigger. Stop. Let that sink in for a second. A former Browns quarterback with a chip on his shoulder at home against the team that replaced him with a $230 million bet that hasn't paid off yet. That is exactly the kind of setup that turns a normal Week 2 matchup into a story that follows Cleveland around for the rest of the season, win or lose. And it's worth remembering how fast narratives like this can spiral once the season actually starts. One rough outing on national television against a motivated former Brown, and suddenly every question in every press conference is about the quarterback situation instead of the game plan. Coaches hate that kind of distraction more than almost anything else because it takes the attention off the work being done during the week and puts it entirely on one storyline that never seems to go away until somebody makes a real decision. So let's put it all together. 11 interceptions for Watson through camp against 4 for Shedeur, a deep ball that's nearly vanished over the last 2 practices, a quarterback who says flat out he doesn't care what the fan base thinks of him, and a front office that might already be looking past this season toward wherever Watson lands next. Every piece of this points toward the same uncomfortable question for Todd Monken. At what point does loyalty to the $230 million contract stop making sense compared to what's actually showing up on the practice field every single day? Look, nobody's saying this is decided. Camp battles shift, and one practice doesn't make a season, but the trend right now isn't close. Shedeur is protecting the football, and Watson is handing it away, over and over, practice after practice, and the deep ball that made him worth that contract in the first place just isn't showing up anymore. If Monken keeps running it back with Watson through Jacksonville and into that Baker Mayfield revenge game waiting in Tampa, he better hope the tape turns around fast, because right now it is not trending in his favor at all. And here's the part that should really bother Cleveland fans watching this camp play out. This isn't a rookie mistake problem. This isn't a young guy who needs more reps to figure out the system. This is a veteran quarterback in year 8, sitting on $230 million fully guaranteed dollars, and the deep ball is gone. The turnovers are piling up faster than anybody else on the roster, and by his own words, he doesn't even seem bothered by how the fan base feels about any of it. That combination right there, the declining tape and the indifference to the reaction, is exactly the kind of thing that turns a quiet quarterback competition into a real quarterback controversy. Meanwhile, you got a rookie in Shedeur who is doing the opposite of all of that, protecting the football at a rate most rookies never manage, showing up in the numbers every single practice, and reportedly outplaying Watson during the public viewing windows according to the same Browns media that's supposed to be covering this thing objectively. That's not a small detail. When your own beat reporters start noting that the rookie looks sharper than the $230 million veteran, that's usually the first sign that a quiet competition is about to become a loud one. So think about where this leaves Todd Monken. He's got a front office that hasn't ruled out a Watson trade if the season slips away from expectations. He's got a veteran who might already have one foot out the door toward a reunion with his old coordinator in Atlanta. And he's got a rookie who keeps delivering exactly the kind of low-mistake, efficient football that wins camp battles, even if it doesn't always look flashy on highlight reels. At some point, sticking with the plan just because it was the plan stops making sense, especially with a brutal road stretch coming up against Jacksonville and then a fired-up Baker Mayfield looking for his moment. Every one of these preseason snaps is going to get picked apart by somebody. The national guys, the local beat writers, even opposing coaching staffs building their scouting reports for the regular season. Cleveland doesn't get to run this quarterback battle quietly anymore, not with a rookie generating this much attention, and not with a veteran already carrying this much history and this much money attached to his name. There's also a version of this where the front office decides the smartest move is neither extreme, not a full benching, not a blind commitment either, just a slow, steady shift in workload where Shedeur starts seeing more first-team reps in these preseason games while Watson gets managed carefully, almost like they're protecting an asset instead of building around a starter. If that's the plan, watch how the preseason snap counts get split over these next couple weeks. That usually tells you more about what a coaching staff actually believes than anything said in a press conference. And honestly, this is bigger than just one training camp. This is about whether a $230 million fully guaranteed contract can survive a rookie outperforming it in real time, in front of everybody, with the tape available for anyone to go watch for themselves. It's about whether a front office that has invested this much capital and this much public credibility into one quarterback is willing to admit, even quietly, that the plan isn't working the way it was drawn up. And it's about whether Monken
Runkin has the room to make that decision on football terms alone, or whether the money and the history end up deciding it for him no matter what the practice tape says. Because make no mistake, this coaching staff sees the numbers we're seeing. They know the deep ball is gone. They know the turnovers are piling up faster than anybody else on the roster. And by his own words, he doesn't seem bothered by how the fan base feels about any of it. That combination right there, the declining tape and the indifference to the reaction, is exactly the kind of thing that turns a quiet quarterback competition into a real quarterback controversy. So here's what I want to know from you. Do you think Todd Runkin sticks with Deshaun Watson through the start of the regular season no matter what happens the rest of camp? Or do you think Shedeur Sanders forces his way into the starting job before week 1 even gets here? Drop your answer in the comments below because I want to see where this fan base actually stands right now heading into these preseason games. Let me know if you think this camp battle is already decided or if it's still wide open. And let me know if you think that Baker Mayfield revenge game is coming whether Cleveland wants it or not. Smash like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.